Welcome to the podcast review show. I'm your host, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com. This is where we take a podcast. Tonight, we're looking at the Jeep Talk Show, and we find out what you're doing right so you can do more of that. And then we find those things that maybe just need a little tweaking, and we help you do that. And joining me, as always, is my co-host, Erik K. Johnson. You might know him as the podcast talent coach. Erik, how's it going, buddy?
Things are good, Dave. Things are good. Just trying to stay warm in the crazy Midwest winter. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. And Tony is down in Texas, I believe. Tony, how are you?
I am down in the great state of Texas.
Yeah, you said you were freezing because it was getting down to 19, I think it was.
We need you guys to send emergency blankets ASAP. We're supposed to. It's below freezing. It's going to be below freezing for over 24 hours here.
Oh,
and yes, it's just insane.
Yeah, I just asked Alexa. She said it was 6 in Ohio. So
our high today here was 3. So
excellent. And you can find Tony over at jeeptalkshow.com. One of the things I like about this show is I don't have to ask, so what's your show about? You know what I mean? It's a great name. And what inspired you to get into podcasting?
Well, we started I started up a Jeep forum and started specifically for the Jeep Cherokee from the 1984 to 2001 model. I don't even think they were still in production at then, but it wasn't that long after they had been gone out of production. There's a big following there. You guys may be aware there's a lot of Jeep. There's almost like a Jeep family. So I wanted to try to create a forum so that people could come and ask questions, ask the basic questions, ask the stupid questions, and not get their ass chewed for asking a stupid question, or it's been told that it's been asked 1,000 times before. If you guys have been on the forum, on forums, you know how it is. And so I started it. And then, I don't know, 2-3 years after I'd started it, I was looking for a way to try to promote the forum to get more people knowing about the forum and show up over there. So I thought, hey, podcast, why not? That sounds like that'd be fun. So started it, and it was originally called the XJ Talk Show because the website for the forum was XJ Talk. So I was kind of clever there and melding the two together.
and XJ, obviously the J is Jeep. The X is...
I'm sorry. Actually, the Jeep has always had 2-letter designators after the military Jeep that was used in World War II. Ah. So the CJ was the one that came out right after the military Jeep, and then everyone after that has had a 2-letter designator. Like the new Jeep Wrangler that has just come out is I'm gonna get this wrong. They corrected me the other day on the show. The LJ, I believe. The one before that was the JK and the JKU. So they all have designators.
Got it. It's a Jeep thing, basically.
It is. It very much is.
We are knee deep in the Jeep. Excellent.
We're knee deep. There's a t-shirt waiting to happen right there.
How did you pick your co-hosts?
Actually, if you go back and listen to some of the early episodes, it was just me droning on and on, all alone and being very boring. So I thought, hey, this would be a lot easier if I had somebody to do this with. So I went to the website, xjtalk.com, and asked for somebody that might be interested in being a co-host on the show. And Josh, who has had prior experience as DJing, DJing events, he stepped up and did a couple of segments, and it seemed like he was going to be there for the long haul. And I asked him to join the show.
Nice.
Many years later, Tammy joined the show, and she was a brand new Jeeper. Josh and I had been doing stuff with Jeeps for many years, and she was brand new to all this. And I thought, if we can get somebody that has a Wrangler, because both Josh and I had Jeep Cherokees, if I could get somebody that had a Wrangler and was brand new that could ask the basic questions, because after you know things for a while, you forget about what the basic questions are. So female Wrangler owner and brand new, very enthusiastic. So her job was to ask the basic questions.
That's a great way to get over that curse of knowledge. Bring on somebody brand new, because that helps you remember what you forgot you didn't know.
Exactly.
Great idea.
Well, I stumbled on it, and I thought of that edge about it afterwards.
So are you primarily the host and they are brought in for color commentary, or what's kind of the role of each person?
I started it It's my show. I brought in two co-hosts, and I look at them as co-hosts. We all make decisions on the show. We brainstorm about what do we need to do to make the show better. What segments should we have, et cetera, et cetera. Josh and I do a lot of we do all of the audio drops. So anything that you hear on there, Josh and I have produced. And some of the stuff I might get some voice work off of Fiverr and blend it in. But here recently, Josh and I have been using our own voices.
On this particular episode, it feels like Josh does a lot of the driving, especially at the beginning of the episode. Dave will play a little bit for us, but it feels like it's a lot of Josh up front. And so it's interesting to hear you say that all three of you are co-hosts and that it was originally your show, because I thought I would have heard more of you at the front of the show, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of that, that's a good segue into what we like to do is play. We try to find a good spot. So we're going to play, I believe it is the first, couple minutes of the show here, just to let people get a gist of how the show starts off, talk about the first impression, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Episode 314, January 4th, 2018.
You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Are you ready?
It's the Jeep Talk Show. With Tammy on Wrangler, Tony and Josh on Cherokee. So sit back, strap in, and brace yourself.
Local Jeep news, national Jeep news, and news from around the world. It's This Week in Jeep.
And This Week in Jeep is brought to you by Amazon.com. Jeepers, when you turn to the almighty interwebs for that instant gratification in buying parts or accessories for your Jeep, be sure to use our link first, would you? JeepTalkShow.com/Amazon. You'll be taken straight to Amazon.com, where you can get exactly what you need or want for your Jeep. And the Jeep Talk Show will get a tiny little kickback for your efforts. Oh, it's the perfect New Year's resolution. Anytime you shop online, use JeepTalkShow.com/Amazon. And thanks in advance. Well, let's just file this one under best intentions, shall we? We all know the East Coast is getting just nailed right now with bitter cold and tons of snow and ice. And it's a little town in New York where this cold, some ice, and a Jeep all come together for this story. The city of Tonawanda, New York, has an area that is roughly the size of 2 soccer fields. Ives Park Skating Pond off of Delaware Street is a 2.5-foot deep pond that is dry and is used for soccer games in the summer. In the winter, it's deliberately flooded to create a spot for ice skating. Way back, before they had refrigerators, a private business filled up that pond in the winter, just as they do today, but took blocks of ice out of it and sold the blocks to people for their ice chests. Well, nowadays, the pond, when frozen over in the winter, is typically cleared of any fallen snow by those who want to use it by grabbing their skates and shovels and, well, getting to work.
We're going to cut it off there. If you want to hear the rest of that story, you have to go out to jeeptalkshow.com. Because it's one of those, it's like, if I don't stop there, then we get into the whole story, and the story goes on for quite a bit. So, Eric, I'll let you go first. What were your first kind of opinion? What were your first thoughts of how the show started off?
I thought I think the show title is great. You know exactly what you're getting. We were talking earlier that the show was originally called something else. This here tells me exactly what the show's about. I love the show title. I know what I'm getting into. I thought it was great there. I love the fact that there are 3 of you with differing opinions. Originally, I thought there were 2 that were introduced because Tammy on Wrangler and then Tony and Josh on Cherokee kind of runs together. Tony and Josh, you know, especially with his big voice guy. So I missed that there were 2 of you there until I started digging around the website. So that could be a little cleaner there. But I love the fact that the Jeep Talk Show Amazon affiliate mention was kind of fun, upbeat, and quick. Moved right through that. And I thought the frozen pond story's good. I loved the visualization of it and the fact that, they're driving out there, cleaning it and that sort of thing. I would have liked to have seen Josh tell you guys the story and have your natural reactions to it rather than him just reading the story to me. It felt very stiff and newsy in that direction. I would have liked to have seen him just tell the story and heard you guys, your natural reactions and your laughter and your take on it as it went through it and help him tell that story. But overall, I think we're jumping right into it, and I like the momentum that we have right here out of the gate. We didn't spend a whole lot of time treading water. We got right into it.
Yeah, we learned the hard way as far as treading water, because we would originally do about 3 minutes of just bantering back and forth.
Yeah,
and some Stitcher was really instrumental in looking at their stats, even though we didn't have a lot of downloads off of Stitcher. They showed that I think it's the greater than 15-second listens were really, percentage wise, were really low. And I said, we got to change something up to make the show interesting, to hold people there longer than 15 seconds. They're walking up to the window, looking into the story and going, nah, nothing here for me.
There was a session done at Podcast Movement about that, and statistics show that most listeners, a vast majority of people that start the podcast, drop off in the first 5 minutes because there was no content there. There was nothing there. And you guys hit it, and you're running right out of the gate, which I thought was fantastic. And you're 300 episodes into it. You can hear the show's polished. The transitions that you guys use, the production value that you have, you can tell that you've refined it over the years. It sounds great. And I appreciated the fact that we didn't waste a whole lot of time before we got to the content.
Yeah.
It was pretty high energy. I like that. And then the deep voice man explaining it was news about this and that and that. So I knew exactly where we're going. And then he just jumped right into it with the story. I was going to ask Erik's opinion on this, because he did a story, and the stories aren't short. They're not super long, but they're not like, it's not, this is what happened, blah, 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 and that's what happened. It's not like a 20-second story. He gets in fairly deep. And then they did another one, and then they did another one. So they did 3 stories. And the first thing was, one of them was about a lawsuit about something to do with sand in an engine or heating or something like that. Mm-hmm. And Tammy was the first one that said, hey, when I do my heater thing, and I remember thinking, wait, what's she talking about? And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Like 4 minutes ago, I think he mentioned something about the heater. And I was with Erik. I'm like, I don't know if this is how you would do it, Erik, but I was thinking, like, do the news story, talk about it. That would be the other thing. Like, hey, wait till you guys hear about this. There's this pond, and, go that route, and then let them comment on it, and then go, all right, here's the next story. So-and-so, that lawsuit we talked about a couple episodes ago, well, that's done, and get their conversation. Would that be a better way to maybe handle that, Erik?
Yeah, that's what I talk about a lot on my podcast, is storytelling, and it's lead with that headline, lead with that provocative point, that intriguing introduction, whatever you want your listener to take from the story, and then fill in the details and give me all of the information I need to know to understand the point you're trying to make with the story. So about the lake story, the pond, the frozen pond story here, what's the one thing you want me to laugh at, marvel at, or better understand with that story? Lead with that punch, and then fill in the rest of it. But I that's what I was talking about with it being a lot of Josh here at the beginning. I would have liked to have heard an introduction of each host, so I can pinpoint which voice is which. I know you're 300 episodes into it, and you have a lot of super fans that have been around a long time. But there's guys like Dave and I this is our first time listening to it. We don't know who's who. So an introduction of each voice would have helped. And then just to hear Josh tell the story, I heard the moans in the background, so I knew you guys were there. And I was like, well, is she going to say something? Is Tony going to chime in here? But there wouldn't be anything. And then it would just, the story would keep going. I would have liked to have heard some input and some conversation. And you got to be kidding me. Who drives a Jeep out there without first testing the ice or something like that? And help just make it more, tell me the story rather than read me the story.
And you did do a nice job about, I forget where it was in the middle, but one of the things, and it's one of those things I don't realize until you brought it up, Erik, once, that when I listen occasionally to morning radio, Erik, and that's where they'll say things like, hey, Tony, what do you think of, and it's Rover and Dieter. And I notice now that Rover says, Dieter, what do you think of that? Even though he knows that's Dieter and Dieter knows that's Rover, but they say it in Charlie and Snitz and, whatever, all the stupid radio names that they have. So
yeah, Tony, you actually did that in the middle. It was about 31 minutes into the show, if you want to go find it.
And it sounds like this.
Oh, here it is.
I've got a technical question for you about shocks.
By all means.
Josh, why do they call it a shock?
Well, you know,
Of
when you
course, that's a
go
joke.
over, you know, on the road or whatever, and you hit a
bad
bump,
joke.
that's a shock. It's kind of a shock to
They're
your system and
shock
whatnot.
absorbers.
Tammy's got the answer.
But that's where you threw in a Josh.
Yeah, and a
I
Tammy.
I just wish
Yeah.
I hadn't stumbled and said, Josh, like I didn't remember his name.
Yeah, but it was perfect. You used his name, you used her name. We're starting to get to know the characters in the show. I would have liked to have heard more of that throughout the episode from all of you. But that's how the new listener gets to know who the players are. You know, they get to be part of the club now because they get to feel their way around. And I thought that was a great example. It was a nice, perfect way to use their name without being very stiff. Josh, what do you think? You know, it's you just naturally threw it in there. Even if you did stumble, it sounded very natural to me.
And even at the beginning, all you have to do is say, I'm Dave, I'm Eric, I'm Josh, I'm Tammy. Hey, wait till you guys hear about this thing, this pond. You know, it doesn't have to be a ton, but just to identify who's who. And it's not something you have to do quite as much. Like with radio, you're getting a new audience every 12 minutes. But nonetheless, it is something you'd want to, you know, you always have to remember we've only up to about, I think the last report was like 40% of people have heard a podcast. So we got another 60% of people that are brand new to the show. You did do a nice trick that people do in radio, which is good because your show, I want to say, was a little over an hour. So to get people to stick around, you did a nice tease.
Yeah. Well, hey, Jeepers, coming up here later in the show, we've got such a positive response after he was on the last time that we just had to invite Anthony from Tread Right Tires for another interview. He'll be joining us in a little bit. And next week, make sure you're subscribed to the show as we'll have Kelly Buttrick back to tell us how her journey has gone in her attempts to be the new voice of Jeep.
So I thought that was cool because not only did it tease what's coming up in this episode, but what's coming up next week. Yeah. So I saw that and I was like, oh, that was well done. And again, wasn't, you know, drawn out, like you didn't do a show about next week's show. It was like, here's what's going to happen. Here's how you're going to benefit. Here's why we brought them back. I love the fact that you said, you know, back by popular demand. You're explaining to people, why is this person on the show? So I just heard that and I was like, good on you.
I think that's a great point, Dave. I think overall you have a solid show, Tony. I think if I were to try and help you tighten the show up or make it any better, it would be to add a little structure to it because it's a magazine sort of show. You have maybe, I don't know, I'm going to take a guess that you probably have 10 different segments on the show. Do you know off the top of your head how many you have?
I do not. I'd have to look at our show notes. We work from a template.
Yeah, there was Wrangler talk. There was tech talk. There was a
little kid. There's a lot of great stuff on there. I loved it all, but it's a magazine sort of format. You know, it's over the course of the hour and a half. We have this segment and that segment. I would have liked to have seen more of that done where, hey, coming up in the show, don't forget, we still have tech talk and we still have Jeep Mama coming up. Right now, let's get into something about whatever, off-roading or whatever, the event of the week, or let's get into Nikki G or wherever you are, but kind of set up what's coming up over the next 90 minutes, what we're going to get to, what I have to look forward to. And you don't have to laundry list it where you're listing all 10, but give me 2 or 3 that are coming up here in the next 20 minutes or whatever. So I know what's on the way.
No, I think that's
show.
Great. Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea, and the interaction between the stories at the beginning of during This Week in Jeep, the first segment that we do. I think those are great ideas, and I think one of the reasons why we wanted you to critique our podcast was we don't do this professionally. You know, we've never been into the broadcast media. It's just something that we play around doing, talking about a subject that we love. So hearing these things, because we just recently threw in those teasers. I mean, you see it on television, you hear it on radio. So it's like, I was like, duh, why aren't we doing it?
Yeah,
so we've kind of started slowly in putting these things in, and hearing you say we need more of that. It's going to be like, well, you know, mom and dad said this is the great thing to do, so we need to do more of it. So yeah, that's great. This is great feedback.
But the way you did it right there, where you say, hey, coming up a little later on, we're going to talk to the guy and then about the tires. And then next week, we're going to talk about that. That's about all you need. I mean, I don't want to hear 6 or 7 because that's going to waste my time.
Yeah.
But if you say, hey, don't forget coming up, we're still going to get into this and we still have the joke of the week coming up, or however you want to tease it, just a little something that's still on the way. So then when it comes up, I go, oh yeah, this is what Tony told me was coming up. Here it is.
And the other thing that I was so happy to hear, because you have a lot of segments, so that means there's going to be different transitions, is it drives me nuts when somebody goes, hey, Eric, you want to go to the lightning round? You think we should? And then Eric goes, I don't know, you want to go to the lightning round? Yeah, let's go to the lightning round. And then it's like, whoosh, bang, it's the lightning round. No, just play. Yeah, just play it so you'd be done and you'd kind of like, you said you guys work from a template, and that's awesome because at least from this side of the fence, I'm thinking you guys know that we've beat this, we've beat all the education we're going to get out of this. We beat all the entertainment, anything that we're talking about this topic, we're done and we're moving on. And here comes the cool transition with, we're listening to the 4x4 network or whatever it is. And then you come out of it and you're like, next topic. So that was one I was very pleasant to hear, because a lot of people do that. They transition to the transition.
Yeah, there was never a point in time where you said, now it's time for blank.
Yeah.
That never happened, which kept the forward momentum going, which made the hour and a half not feel like an hour and a half. Like Dave said, it was a little more than an hour. No, it was 90 minutes. I mean, it was, but it moved quickly because we didn't take a lot of time treading water in a transition. Now it's time for the lightning round, and then play the 15-second lightning round intro that you just told me you were doing. Mm-hmm. You didn't do any of that, which was great.
And it was, I like the fact that it's, and we could talk about a little bit of this in a second, in terms of like how advanced is your listener. But you did a segment in this particular episode where it was something to do with like Jeeping with kids. And is this one, that's the one thing I was confused on. Is this a listener or was this one of the hosts' children?
We call them contributors.
Okay.
They help contribute to the show.
Got it. So here's a little clip, and this was just adorable.
You remember who else goes with us? Chico, right? Who else?
Jay.
And what do we tell you about Jay?
Call him Sweet Cheeks.
So it was, the thing I liked about it is it was fairly short. It wasn't like, because after a while, it's kind of like when somebody puts their kid on the phone and you're like, hi, how's it? No, can I have your mom back, please? It was about the time you're like, okay, she is cute. And I even like the fact that they used it for educational, because at the end, he's like, now, why don't we litter? And so I was like, all right, cool. This isn't just, let's get the cute little kid on the thing. So there was actually some good points made through that segment. So I thought that was something that was done pretty well. But
so let me mention something real quick about this. That's Nate, and Nate does some contributing segments for us on occasion. I mean, he's been doing some regular ones here recently. He's actually going to be co-hosting this week for us because Josh is going to be out. But Nate and I have gone back and forth many, many times when I tell him your segment has to be 3 minutes, maybe 4, but not over 4. And he would just give me hell about it because I told him it has to be short. We can't have this thing going on 7-10 minutes. The show's too tight. And also, too, I want to make sure that we get into the story, we get out of the story. Because I told Josh this a while back that if we keep it short and people like it, they're going to want to come back for more of those type of stories. If we make it if they don't like the story, then it's not so long that it's going to say, I'm not listening to this crap anymore and pressing stop.
Right. If you waste 2 minutes of my time, it's only 2 minutes. It's like, all right, whatever. It was only a couple.
Yeah.
But if I get done after 10 minutes and go, well, that's 10 minutes of my life I can't get back.
Exactly.
That's the problem.
Don't overstay your welcome and always leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly.
Eric, did you want to comment on like the knowledge level of the audience?
Yeah. So as I was listening to the whole episode, the interview part. Do you have any of the interview, Dave?
Actually, I put in my notes here. This is one of my favorite parts, and then I didn't clip any of it.
The interview with the tire guy, I thought was solid. I didn't understand half of what he was saying. Oh yeah, the 3097 RP3s, and I was like, I don't know what any of that means because I'm not a Jeep guy. I'm the newbie. But I thought it was interesting, and I thought he was very knowledgeable, and I thought that you ran with him. A little later on in the show, we get into some other tech speak. Like it was way over my head, and there was a lot of lingo being used.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people that listen to your show are Jeep enthusiasts, you know, and they know what all of the slang and everything means. But if I'm a new Jeep guy, I just got my Wrangler and I'm pumped and I want to get into the whole thing, and I'm new to the show. Be careful that we're not using too much lingo, assuming everybody knows. Explain it every once in a while and what it means, or where I might be able to find where it means. You know, if maybe on your website you have a Jeep dictionary, you know, and you define a lot of the vocabulary and what it all means, what the XP means and what the XJ means, and you know what a R3097P tire is. Because the tire talk, he was talking a lot about the nubs or the bubbles or the something or another. I don't remember what it was, but there was a lot of lingo. So unless we're talking strictly to 100% Jeep enthusiasts and not to any newbies, you're fine. But if you're trying to welcome more people into the gang and into the club and help them get up to speed quickly, every now and then be sure we're just defining a little bit of that lingo for them.
I did have one question about that I just kind of went, why did he ask that? You asked him where they ship their tires from. And I was like, it's one of those where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not a car person, let alone picking my favorite type of Jeep or whatever. But like, what was the purpose of asking him, where do you ship from?
It's been a while since we did that show. That's a couple of shows back, and a lot of my questions, I don't write any questions down. It's all just off the top of my head. But I'll say this: there is a automobile parts company that a lot of people buy from, and Jeep people buy from, called RockAuto.com. RockAuto.com has multiple warehouses, and you pay shipping on each part that comes from a different warehouse. The Tread Right Tires is a Houston-based company. And I was kind of, just off the top of my head now, I'm thinking, well, do you actually ship them from Houston? Are they available locally in Houston where you don't have to ship? And I mean, that might have been the direction I was going, where
got it.
You can just go there and pick them up.
Because if it's one location in California, the guys on the East Coast better know that, because it's going to affect their shipping price. So that makes sense.
And he came back and answered that they have like 6 locations. Right. I mean, we have one in Kansas City, and we have one in Portland, and we have one in Houston. And I'm like, holy cow, what are you making tires all over the country?
Yeah.
That was crazy.
The Tech Talk segment, I remember listening, and he did a pretty good job at the beginning hitting the vocabulary, because he was explaining about, I think it was 5 different types of shock absorbers or something like that. A lot of different types of shock absorbers. We'll talk about that later when we get to your website, because I went for details and there weren't any. But at the time he did a good job of saying, this is a type of thing, it's called this, and kind of here's what it does. And then he would go into like major Jeep-esque kind of things that I was like, okay, that's a thing. So I thought he did a good job of that. Do you do any kind of editing of the show?
I try not to do a whole lot. The reason for that is we used to do the show live on YouTube, and we needed to have it nice and where it would actually run out properly for the live viewers. But after after years of getting 7-15 live viewers, I thought this will be a lot easier if we just do audio.
There you go. Oh man, that's some wisdom coming out right there.
Well, this wasn't worth it. And perhaps when we get our numbers up again, we'll go back to the live show. I have all this nice video stuff that I purchased that I still use. We do video clips, and I don't know if you saw those or not on the website. So we're using it for that now.
Okay.
A couple more things about the interview guy. Right before you got into that part that Dave played there, where you used both Josh and Tammy's name, was a great example of you using their names. But if you listen right after that, you get into a little bit of a discussion, and Tammy, as the newbie, starts asking some questions about why you do this, or what's the difference in shock absorbers, and who cares. And Josh actually got out of his announcer guy, his reading voice, and started actually explaining some stuff to her. Well, even like when he took why do they call it shock absorbers, or why are they called shocks?
Right.
And he actually stepped back and started giving you a legitimate definition of why they call them shocks. I mean, he actually got out of his reading character and started actually giving you a legitimate answer. And I would have liked to have heard more of that, Josh. More of that. Just let's sit down and have a conversation. You got questions for me? I'll tell you all about it, because I love that side of him, and I wish I had more of that in the show. And when he gets into the interview, he does a nice job with it when he gets away from his written down questions or the questions he already has formulated in his mind, and he starts getting into some follow-up questions. He becomes his natural self also. He asked a great question about what's the deal with the 30-inch tires being out of stock all the time?
Yeah.
You know, I'm reading on websites and blogs and everything. People are upset that these tires are out of stock. You can never get them from you guys. What's the deal? I thought that was a great question. It was a bold question, because here's a guy that you guys respect. He's the president of the company. And you're basically saying, you know, what's going on? How come I can't get your stuff? You're always out of stock. That's pissing everybody off. And I thought that was a great question. That was a solid question from him. Josh, on the other hand, does have a crutch that he uses nonstop, and it's whatnot. Josh says whatnot probably. He says it at least 4 times in that interview alone, and he said it a few more times throughout the episode. So,
well, I don't know. You guys probably missed it because it was on an earlier episode, but we have a drinking game, and no, I'm just kidding.
You would be hammered by the time the episode's over. But that was one thing Josh should pay attention to.
I think Josh has to do a lot with fillers, since when he did his DJ work, he was always trying to talk and fill the thing. He was by himself, so he had to fill that audio all the time. So I think he throws in a lot of filler words in there, as I do with
Yeah, don't be afraid of the silence. The silence is okay. You'll be surprised how much your guest will talk when you don't. And if you just stop talking, it's natural. It's natural to do in a conversation. I don't understand in that particular interview why there weren't more questions from you and Tammy in that interview. Josh seemed to handle a lot of it. Does he have a relationship there, or was there a reason he drove the car most of the time? At the end of the interview, the two of you chimed in a little bit. Tammy asked what kind of Jeep he had. She was like, "Oh, you have a Jeep. What kind is it?" And you asked a question or two, but most of it came from Josh. And I was just wondering why that was.
So I would say 90% of the time, I'm the main person on the interview. And I thought about this after I gave you the episode, and I said, well, this is going to be unusual, because I asked Josh if he would like to drive this time, because he's not normally there. He's not normally there for the interview. He comes in during the interview because of the time zone he's in. And this is another thing. Actually, I was going to ask you this question. We can do it here in a bit about the location of the host, because I think that's kind of a selling point. But anyway, he gets in late because he's over on the West Coast. Tonight, on that night, he was in there on time to start the interview. So I asked him if he wanted to drive. So it was, I try to give Tammy more openings. Josh is like a vocal bulldozer. Once he gets started, he just drives right through.
Can you guys see each other when you're doing the interview?
They do not see me, so we can have the bandwidth available. Just get the good audio quality. So, but I see them.
Do you have a chat box or something like that open where you might be able to just say, "Hey, I have a question here"?
I hate to have an excuse for everything. We recently, to try to enhance the video, I've gone to full screen on Skype, so I can get the 1920 by 1080 for the little clips that I do.
Okay.
So we can't chat back and forth in Skype anymore. So I need to come up with another way of doing it. We used to up until recently.
Yeah, there were just a couple parts where you talked over each other and that sort of thing. And I'd just like to see, rather than trying to butt your way into the episode, if you just kind of, I got a question over here. And then Josh, you got a question for him? And then Josh go, yeah, I was just wondering why the thing that, yada, yada. And then Josh can jump in with his question. If you have a quarterback that's kind of tossing it to people.
Yeah, I actually made the conscious decision that we wouldn't have more than 2 people interviewing a guest, because I didn't want to gang up on the guest from 3 different voices. And also, too, I thought it would be confusing for the listeners to hear something from 3 different people.
Well, if you have somebody like you who's quarterbacking the whole episode, great radio hosts do this. They'll be there. I'm running the interview, but I have 3 other people in the room with me, and I'm interviewing you. And I'd say, we'd be talking and having this conversation, and then Dave would hold his hold his hand up like I have a question. And in the middle of it, I'd say, Dave, you have something for Tony? And Dave would say, yeah, I was just wondering, why do they call them Jeeps? And then you can answer, and we go, yeah, why do they call them Jeeps? And we talk a little bit. I go, oh, Tammy, you have a question for Tony? Tammy would say, yeah, I was wondering why Jeeps are red. And oh, here's why. And we'd go along. And so I don't think the guest is going to have an issue of the direction that the question is coming, especially if you're introducing the individual asking the question, because now it lets the guest know, okay, this is a question from Dave. And it also lets the new listener know this is Dave and he's asking a question without being that blatant. Dave, you got a question for Tony?
And that is something that you would only do if you could see me waving at you, or do you just do that before you move off of a topic?
Yeah, probably. If we're all on Skype or on Zoom or something and I can see everybody, that makes it easiest. Well, being in the same room makes it easiest. But when one's in the West Coast and one's on the East Coast and one's in Houston, that's a little different. So if you can see everybody, that's great. But if you can't, if you have a little chat box open and I just say, hey, I have a question, and then Dave could say, Eric, do you have a question for Tony? I'd say, yeah, I was wondering about the cues that you guys use to help each other. And so because Dave could see it in the chat box.
So this is probably too much inside baseball for your audience, but I have a little show timer that I've written in Visual Basic. And the idea is that I wanted to set it up with client server, TCP/IP client server. So Tammy or Josh or I could start and stop the show timer. We have an overall timer of the show, but we can pause it if we have a mistake. And I wanted to give them the ability to do all that starting and stopping, and also to have timers for the different segments. The one thing that I wanted to do was put a chat box in there and a way to press a button where it would flash a light basically on the thing to get somebody's attention, because all of us, once we get into a role, it's hard to capture our attention. And I think doing the Skype thing, if you could wave, I think that would probably work out. But again, we save the bandwidth going out by not sending video to them.
That makes sense.
So we have something that works. I just got to get off my dead ass to finish the software.
That was a little inside baseball, but it sounds like it's a pretty cool little app that you're developing.
Well, another segment that you did kind of in the middle of the show is you read some reviews that people had given you, which I always applaud, because if you want people to send in more, you ought to read the ones on the air that people give you. I'm not sure I was crazy about the placement about it, because there were quite a few in this particular episode to where it was kind of like, and here's somebody else that thinks we're awesome. And then blah, blah, blah. And, they think we have great banter, and so from the something show said that, and it's kind of like, okay. And then it's like, and here's another one. And I'm like, okay. So for me, I was thinking, you're saying that because those are the super fans that said that to you. Maybe put that more towards the end, because the super fans are going to be listening there anyway. And then, I think that was right before Tech Talk, if I remember right. And I thought that way we're still kind of talking Jeep. I wasn't sure if maybe you were using that to kind of break up the monotony of talking about Jeeps all the time. But to me, I was just kind of like, okay, and here's another review and another review. And
we try to go something, technical or segment wise that is informational, and then something that's not. And then something that's technical, informational, not tech. So that's the reason for that. But we could certainly move it around. I mean, I understand what you're saying. And you guys are probably the same way. It's just so wonderful when you hear from somebody, you talk into a microphone, and you see the download numbers, but you don't really know that it's real. And when you hear from somebody through a review, it's like, oh my God, thank you so much. And it just blows you away, especially when you get the 5-star reviews and all the great things. But we make it a point that any negative reviews that we get, and negative reviews are like 3 stars usually, we read those, and we ask for those because we want to make the show better. We want to reach a wider audience.
Well, that's it's like I said, that was the good news, is you weren't ignoring these reviews, and you're, giving them attention. And you weren't during them at the top of the show. I always love that. Hey, let's start off with a review. I'm like, let's not, because I tuned in for whatever is in the title of this episode, not to hear somebody go, I think you're awesome.
One of the great things about this show is that there are times where Dave and I sometimes disagree. I didn't have any problem with the reviews in the middle of the show, because to me, the reviews are trying to turn your regular listener, your average listener, into the super fan. And
point.
putting that up there, putting it in the middle of it ensures everybody hears it, which I kind of like, and giving a little shout out. One thing I would have done that where I do agree with Dave is I may not have strung 3 or 4 of them together. Maybe give a shout out, maybe make it the review of the week. We want to give a shout out to Dave for leaving us a great review. Dave says, these guys are awesome. I learned something every time. Been listening since 2012. 5 stars. And then you just say, thanks, Dave. Appreciate the review. You too can leave a review on iTunes anytime you'd like, or just something like that, where it encourages people to leave reviews, but it also helps to turn those pedestrian fans into super fans.
Right.
And then you did I can't remember if this was a story, but you talked about, and this might have been just something to promote, hey, if you're going to go shop on our Amazon site, you talked about a remote starter that's available on Amazon. And this, again, may be me not being a Jeep person. I think you said if you have the default key fob or something like that.
Mhm.
But I remember you didn't give a model number. And I was like, well, because I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Wonder how much that is. And then I went out to the website, and we'll talk about this when we get to the website section. You had a bunch of links and none of them were labeled. And I just thought it was kind of interesting that you did a really good job of like, hey, it's freezing outside, and all you got to do is press this button. And next thing you know, your Jeep's all toasty when you get in. And I was like, okay, I'm going to play the mind of the person that goes, I'm going to go do that. And I went to the website and couldn't easily find how to do that. So that was the only thing that I was like, that was a cool segment, but it was like, maybe missed opportunity. And again, I'll probably hit that again when we get to the website. And then Eric, what were your thoughts? Because they got into a gas filling story, a bad shipping story, and the fact that Tammy's neighborhood is salty.
Yeah, salty because they put so much salt on the streets because she lives up by the Chesapeake Bay. I thought the stories were good. I thought the thing I loved about the stories was that it brought out your true personalities and revealed things about each of you in those stories. I thought the gas law story was a good conversation. I thought the story, I believe it was Josh had the problem with the story. He ordered some stuff and it didn't come in and it was round and round. I thought that was good. Even the salt at the Chesapeake Bay was a good story. I'm not sure how it tied into Jeeps, but all of those stories revealed things about you guys and let us know you as people. And that's what I was hoping the stories at the beginning of the show were more of this here. Just you guys chatting it up, talking about could be the story about the store. Was it Josh that had the issue with the store?
Yes.
He was going around and around. He couldn't get his part. He ordered, let me put you on hold. 5 minutes later, they'd come back, and you guys were like, what happened next? Did you get it for free? What did they ship? Did you talk to the president? Did they send you? I mean, you guys were helping him tell that story, and you were asking all the questions that we would ask. That's how I would like to hear you tell the stories at the beginning. Even though the stories at the beginning aren't about you guys, he found a great story about a Jeep driving out on some ice. And he's telling you guys a great story and having you guys go, really? What happened? Was the guy even thinking? Did he measure before he went out? Did he go drill a hole in the ice? And having you guys ask those questions, I would have liked to have heard more of that. I think throughout the episode, you guys do a nice job incorporating listeners into the show. Josh did this when he was interviewing the tire guy, and he said, hey, if you guys want to find out more information about the tires, here's where you can go and here's what you can do. And if you guys want a great set of tires, here's where you go buy them, which I thought was great because he would turn from talking to the interview guest to talking to the listener and then back to the guest, which I thought was great. I love when people do that. They break that fourth wall and kind of bring the audience in. What I would caution you against is using the group speak. You guys, all of you guys, hey, if you guys want to do this, if everybody wants to come join us, and talk to one person instead of multiple people. Because when you're listening to a podcast, it's typically with earbuds in and it's just me. It's just I'm the fourth person in this conversation. And so as I'm interviewing you, if I say, hey, if you want more information on Tony, all you got to do is head on over to the Jeep podcast and you get all the details right here. And I talk to one person instead of the group speak. So that would be the only caution I would make with regard to the way you incorporate those listeners. But overall, I thought the stories were great. I wish I had more of that conversational feel at the beginning of the show.
Yeah, maybe Jeeper instead of Jeepers. But my only thing, because I'm with you, I like the stories because number one, they weren't reading them, and the way when you guys are doing your show notes, it doesn't sound like you're reading, but I know you're reading because when you guys make a mistake, what will happen is, when you guys make a mistake, we don't do that in real life. We don't go back to the beginning of the sentence. If I mess up, I just go, it's kind of like, well, and then I keep going. And so I know when people are reading because when they make a mistake, I know when people are reading because when they make, that's what it does. They go back to the beginning of the sentence. And in real life, we don't do that. So I thought it was a good job of reading without sounding like it was reading. But on the other hand, when you guys just started talking, and that's really what was happening with these stories, is I was like, oh, these guys are just like, shooting the breeze now. And I was like, oh, it's a different dynamic. And I'm with Erik. I liked it a little better. My only question was, and I didn't hate them, was at an hour and 20 minutes, have you had anybody ever say the show was too long? Because none of that, besides the shipping story, was really Jeep related.
No, we've had the opposite. I originally wanted I wanted the show to be an hour, and it was really hard for us to stick to that hour. We would go hour 7, hour 14. And then when we incorporated the interview into the main show, because we had a second show, a call-in show where we'd actually take calls from people, and then we'd have the interview where they could talk to the interviewee on the phone. But I was afraid the numbers were being, the downloads were being taken away from the main show. So we did away with that, but we moved the interview into the main show. All right. So I didn't read any of that, by the way. I was just trying to get a lot of so anyway, point being is that the show got to be an hour and a half because of the interview, and people were saying, I wish it was longer. I wish you guys would do more shows. I'm here at work. I got the earbuds in. Basically I work 8 hours a day, or I drive a truck, and I'm not driving 90 minutes or an hour a day. I'm driving all day. So we have a lot of people talk about binge listening, and then they get, I think they get sad whenever they get caught up because now they have to wait for that 90 minutes every week now.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
I like hearing it. I'm just kind of concerned because I don't think our download numbers match up to all these great, wonderful things that people are saying. Our audience is not nearly as big as what I think it should be. Again, with my multitude of years of broadcast experience, which I have none.
Well, I was going to say, welcome to the party. I don't know any podcast.
Yeah.
You know what?
I'm just wondering if my expectations are very, very much higher. The percentage I heard off of Libsyn was 33% of Americans have ever listened to one podcast. So I keep telling myself that we just have to wait. We just gotta keep going, make sure we have a good product, and people will find us.
Well, and then you take that percentage and go, how many of those people own a Jeep? And that, it's one of those things where you've got, the good news is you've got a niche topic. You're not talking cars. You're not talking,
right.
You're not talking just American cars, and you're talking Jeeps. And so, you're probably never going to have the 10,000 downloads. Who knows? Maybe. But the more niche you get, the more passionate you have an audience. There's a guy I know, his name's Glenn Hebert. He runs the Horse Radio Network. People call him Glenn the Geek. And his most profitable show, if that's what you're into, is his most niche show. It has the smallest audience, but those people go bonkers about whatever type of horse it is. And the sponsors will pay to get some special product for that special horse. And he goes, the riches are in the niches. And I'm like, all right, if you say so.
Yeah, because they all take action. It's crazy. One other interesting thing I found about the stories was that throughout the show, it felt like you kept it pretty clean on purpose, flipping and filth and flarn, and you never actually said any of the words. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of Josh's story, he drops the S-bomb, and I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute!"
I missed a bleep apparently.
And that was the only time I heard it in the whole 90 minutes. And on all the other times, he used some substitute word there, which I thought was quite interesting. So
it's just me. I get to edit the show since I record it, and I don't mark it down when those things happen. It's kind of hard to do when you're having just to have a conversation. And of course, the segment you're talking about is the campfire side chat.
Yeah,
and that's really just a time for us to BS with each other.
Yep, and he was getting pretty fired up because he was telling that story about going around and around with customer service. And
I don't blame him. I would have been pissed off too. But yeah, so I missed a bleep. Actually, I like the bleeps. I think they sound funny.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. Well, the last 2 minutes and 52 seconds of your show sounds like this.
Well, it's officially a new year, and that means setting up those off-road events calendars. Got to get those dates in early, right? So why not send that info to us as well? You know of an off-road event that's happening in 2018, but we want to know about it too. No matter how big, how small, we want to get the word out to the whole world. Shoot us an email with some details, and we'll be sure to add it into the show. Better yet, call our 24/7 voicemail line at 530-675-4102 and leave a message night or day telling us about the event in your own words.
Hey, please take a moment to take our survey at jeeptalkshow.com/survey.
Love hearing from our listeners. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter, Google+, pretty much the whole interwebs, guys. You can find us. Just go to your favorite social media or website or search engine and search for Jeep Talk Show. You will find us.
Join us on the Jeep Talk forum. Pictures, stories, more detail, how to, or ask questions of the host. That's jeeptalkforum.com.
And you can call us anytime and leave us a voicemail at 530-675-4102, and you'll even hear it on our show.
Almost certain. And don't forget, guys, we have a free application for your phone or tablet. Just go to Apple Store or the Google Play and search for Jeep Talk Show.
And if you're making a purchase online or at Amazon, be sure and go to jeeptalkshow.com/Amazon first.
Don't forget, Jeepers, we want to hear your suggestions for guest interviews here on the show. Drop us a line. Let us know who you would like to hear on the next Jeep Talk Show interview.
Hey, folks, and don't forget, you can go over to my blog at www.jeepmomma.com, and you can follow me along my awesome Jeep journey.
And of course, if you need a voice for your product or business, be sure to check out my professional voiceover services and commercial production at thevoiceofjosh.com. You can reach me directly, josh@thevoiceofjosh.com.
Hey, Tammy, you're doing some YouTube videos now too, aren't you?
Yes, I blog now. Video blogging. It's called Jeep Mama's Garage. It's at my YouTube channel.
Well, that's it for this week, guys. Until next week, be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Tumblr. Friend us on Facebook, circle us like vultures on Google+, and above all else, be sure to tell a friend about the one and only Jeep Talk Show. No matter where you're wheeling, if you pack it in, pack it out. See if our outdoor recreation's in good condition, if not better than they were when we arrived. Be sure to check out treadlightly.org to find out how you can tread lightly on our public lands.
And then we're going to play music for no apparent reason.
That is a video segment, ending video segment we used on the live show.
Cut it off. I don't know. I'm telling you, it was there earlier. Then the little girl comes back and says, "Sweet cheeks."
Sweet cheeks. I was going to ask if you listened to the Easter egg at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. I must have cut that off when I made the clip.
What did she say? Call us sweet cheeks or something like that?
Something like that.
So funny.
So, Tony, on your pre-show questionnaire that we got from you, the very final question on that questionnaire is, what's the one thing you want from your audience? And you told us to be regular listeners and for it to be a show that they don't want to miss.
Yep.
Right. You want them to be regular listeners. So to be a regular listener, you'd probably want them to subscribe to your show. At the last 3 minutes of the show here, you gave me 13 things to do, and not one of them was to subscribe to the show. You said, email us your events, take our survey, call the comment line, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, check out the Jeep Talk forums, get our free app, use our Amazon affiliate link, give us interview guest suggestions, check out Jeep Mama blog, get voiceover work done, check out Tammy's YouTube show, follow us on Twitter again, and then check out treadlightly.org. And then
So of those, which one have you done so far?
I haven't done any of them. I've done none of them.
Well, here's there's also in there, I think, visit the truck or the Jeep forum. Was that in there?
Jeep Talk.
I had Jeep Talk forum. I had that one.
Because that was the one that as we kind of transition over to your website, because I thought, okay, let's say I want to do one of those. Let's say I'm like, hey, there's a forum where people are talking Jeeps. So is that blinking fanatically at you as well?
Yes, it is.
I'm sorry, I'm having epileptic seizure.
Yeah, it shouldn't. Okay, hopefully that's chilled out. That was weird.
All of a sudden, Tony falls over in his chair.
Oh
my God, what are we gonna do?
I'm talking in my head. Can you hear me?
So I'm looking for Jeep Talk forum. I think it's right there. Okay, good on you. Because the first time I came out here, I couldn't.
I was trying to be nice. I was just going to say,
good. That's good. That's good. Okay. What is XJ Talk again?
XJ Talk is the forum that the show actually came from originally.
Okay. And what's the difference between XJ Talk and Jeep Talk forum?
Jeep Talk forum is a forum that we created so that people could interact with us directly from the show, get more information, ask questions of the hosts. It's actually in one of those 13 things that we read.
So but there are two forums. There's two separate ones.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
I thought that would be, you guys might point that out as being confusing, but one is a forum that's dedicated to Jeep Cherokees. The model is XJ. The Jeep Talk forum is a forum that is specifically attached to the show, because the show took on a bigger life than what the xjtalk.com site did. I didn't mention that earlier. So when we changed the name of the show, we did a few things differently, and I thought, let's have a forum so people could interact with all Jeeps, not just one model.
So then is Wrangler Talk a forum for Wranglers?
It is.
Okay, so Jeep Talk forum is for the show. XJ Talk is for Cherokees. Wrangler Talk is for Wranglers.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Really simple if you actually created them all.
Yeah, if you knew what you were talking about, there you are, right there.
You know exactly what was going
on. A couple things when I just look at it, and I think Eric, you'd put this in your notes as well. Your header's really big.
Yeah, when I look at it, not your header. When I look at it, the graphic takes up the whole what they call above the fold. Like I thought it was a static page to begin with until I scrolled down and actually saw the content below it. But it looked like that graphic was it, because when I'm looking at it on my laptop, that's all I saw above the fold.
Wow. Of course, it's designed from my screen, which is a 1920 by 1080, and I can see that and the first episode.
No, that's what I see. I see that and then the first episode. But I still thought, I was like, wow, that's I expected for me a header would be about half of this size. Like basically
I can make it smaller.
Yeah. But I mean, that's just, again, it's your website, but I was just kind of like, okay, that's a lot of taking up a lot of room here. Yeah.
So I do have one thing to tell you guys. Listening to a couple of the past shows that you guys have done for podcast reviews, I went in and stuck in the share the stuff, the Facebook and Twitter, because I didn't have that on there originally. I only did that about 3 or 4 days ago. So
that's great. Those look awesome.
So that wasn't there for a while.
One thing about your menu, your drop down menu, where you have the home, the 4x4 network, Jeep Talk forum, and all that. Most of those take me away from the Jeep Talk Show website. And if there's a way for you to do it, I would highly recommend that you make those links open in a new window, so they stay here at the Jeep Talk Show. So if they go, oh, what's the Jeep Talk forum about? And they click on it and it's not what they were looking for, well, now they're completely gone off your site.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I just sloppy web work there for me.
Well, and the other thing, probably one of the most popular pages on your website is going to be your about page.
It's not the voiceover page?
It's not the voiceover page.
Break. I'm the one that urged him to do that.
Okay.
So,
but in the same way
a hard time.
that if somebody asked me about the rock band Kiss, I wouldn't start off with, well, originally they started in New York City under the name Wicked Lester. I don't think that's really like, unless you're going through the history of this. But you start off with the Jeep Talk Show started out in December of 2010 as the XJ Talk Show. Over the years, the podcast has been morphed into a weekly show about more than just Jeep Cherokees and off-roading. Think about your target audience. Is that going to go, oh man, it used to be called the XJ Talk Show. I am subscribing to that. You got to like, what is this going to do for your listener? Like, this is like, you did a great job at the beginning of the show. It's national news. It's this and this and that. You got them hooked here. They're like, well, what is this thing? And I'm not sure. Now that's your history and it's important to you because you lived it. But I think for a brand new listener, I would put, in fact, down towards the bottom, I think you have, the Jeep Talk Show interviews people, companies, and organizations that make up the off-road community. That would grab, I think, the new visitor, potential listener more than it used to be called this. It started in 2010. It's one of those things, and it's easy to fall into this. I do this on occasion, is we get focused too much on how the sausage was made, and I think the end user just wants the sausage and tell me what it's going to taste like or something like that. But that was the only thing that I saw, at least on this page. I like that you have pictures so we get to see who everybody looks like.
Is that your driver's license photo there, Tony?
No, that's one I just came up with. You guys don't follow me on Twitter, but there for a few years, I took that same image, and then for holidays and stuff, I would change it with a New Year's hat and a little blower thing.
Nice.
So I use that same photo for everything.
That's awesome.
I just realized I never clicked on your contact button, which is fine. You've got the voicemail there.
That's new too.
Well,
after listening to all,
you could also you had there was a thing where follow us on Twitter, follow it on whatever your social network is. Look for Jeep Talk Show. You could put those here.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And that way, it's like you could. In fact, it's even it's jeeptalkshow.com/contact-us. You could say if you want to, see if there's a way you can shorten that down to just contact, and you could say if you want to contact us, phone, email, social, it's all there. jeeptalkshow.com/contact makes life a whole lot easier. The one thing that if I wanted to do, this is one thing I know. I know I just shot myself in the foot with the Jeep Talk Show forum. If I'm an Android listener, I am SOL here. I cannot. At least I'm missing something. I see a big button here for iTunes, but even when I'm in a where is the episode?
Android doesn't have an app. That is one of the problems.
Well,
Android doesn't have a web.
There's Stitcher. There's Google Play Music. There's and now there's things. You're on Libsyn. You could sign up for iHeartRadio, Spotify. There's all sorts of other options.
Yeah, I just don't have them on there.
Yeah. I was surprised that
and you don't necessarily need to put all of them on there,
no.
but a Stitcher or Stitcher and iHeartRadio or something like that. If you just use a couple of the big ones up there, that would be truly helpful. I love the fact that your iTunes and your YouTube and your Amazon links and then the phone number are that big, and they're both here on your contact page and your about page. I love that they stand out like that. A Stitcher one added to that would just complete the whole trifecta there.
Yeah. The if I go back here. Yeah. Okay. Because I'm like, how do I get back to the episodes?
Just click the home. There you go.
Yeah. We're there. And I'm not trying to get in your wallet. How are the donations? Have you ever thought about Patreon?
The research that I did on Patreon did not seem that it was very viable. We've had some people in the 4x4 network talk about it. Actually, like one of them's on there on Patreon, and I just haven't never seen any. I didn't see any reason to get on Patreon. It didn't seem like it was a thing that was that popular, at least in our genre. I don't know.
Got it. The one thing I did want to point out is on your advertise page, I found this graph about it was here earlier. I swear it was. Did you take down the graph like in the last hour?
I did not. Another more inside baseball. These web pages are running off of servers in my house, so it actually might be going slow right now because we're using the bandwidth for all this other stuff.
Okay, because I see it here. There's a chart. This chart I found somewhat confusing because for an advertiser, because you're like, this is where we joined Libsyn, and this to me, I would just say, I would just say, look, it's X amount of money per episode. We average X amount of downloads per episode or per month or however you want to do that.
But the graph is so pretty.
Okay.
You can print it out and color it. I mean, it's great.
Oh, wow. That is a great idea.
Yeah,
that's fine. I got you. I'm asking people for money. So it's just like, here, let me show you some evidence.
Well, you can make prettier graphs or it wasn't bad. It was just, to me, I was like, okay. It just, I don't think the average advertiser, because I saw something like we joined Libsyn here, and there was, it just, to me, I looked at it, was like, all they really want to know is how many downloads do you get? How many Twitter followers do you have? How many people on Facebook? Who's going to hear my show? I don't think they care how it's heard. It's just, they need to know who's listening and things of that nature.
Great information. This is one of the reasons why we need to have some validation about the directions we're going, because we're just guessing at this stuff.
Yeah. And depending on, as you go forward, if there were things that are super Jeep specific, your CPM needs to go up. There's again, if I go back to Glenn Hebert, he's got a guy that's selling some sort of electronic pitchfork for people that shovel poo all day. Well, he's charging that guy, a decent rate because Glenn's audience is using that product. So it costs to get to the direct person that you can use your stuff. So if it's something super Jeepy, obviously everybody uses tires, but if it's like, no, this is an accessory for a Jeep, you can say, look, you can go advertise in 5 different magazines, but I got the Jeep people right here. Don't undersell your niche. And that's easier to say because we're all like, well, I don't even have advertiser 1 yet, but don't negate the power of the niche. Eric, did you have any comments on the website? I'm kind of hogging the mic here.
I think we kind of covered it all. I think that header graphic needs to be a little smaller so I can see some stuff below the fold. We talked about the links and the about page. Making the about page outward focused instead of inward focused is an art, and it's very tricky to do. It's not easy to accomplish. If you can adjust your about page a little more to talk about what's in it for the listener, what the show does, and why it's going to benefit the listener, I think that will help your about page a little. And I like the logo. I think the turning the microphone into the Jeep tires was pretty cool. I dig your logo. Whoever created it, I think, did a nice job.
I went to your website on a phone because 80% of podcasts are listened to on some sort of mobile device. And I just want to let you know, I can't see me. Oh, because I'm sharing my screen. Hold on. Let me turn that off a second. There is something that appears to be mobile only called an echo test.
Oh,
because I can't. I was really surprised for all the stuff you have on your website. The mobile app actually isn't bad. I really thought, oh, this is going to be, it's hard to have a website that has a fair amount of stuff on it can get really clunky when you get to mobile. But here's your about page and everything. You've got this little menu at the top. I just happened to click on this button and I'm like, what is echo test? And then I went to the website and saw there is no echo test. So it's something
that is me trying to figure out a way to get the This Week in Jeep news clips on the Amazon Echo. And I was trying to figure out a way to get it there. And I have not removed that test. I didn't know it showed up there. I never go to the webpage on my phone.
Well, I try to cover all the bases. And then
that's great.
The other question I had is on you're doing YouTube videos that aren't the whole show. When I play them, at least, and I don't think you guys will hear them, which is good. I don't want you to. Your head is a little Max Headroomy. If that's even a thing. And I don't know if
only kids from the 80s would remember that reference.
Over 30, you know what that means.
Josh would say timely reference, Tony.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Because on one hand, you've got if I can get rid of these stupid ads.
Oh, sorry about
like
that. I try to
you also
unmonetize all
here
those.
where your green screen may have had a shadow. So you have this weird rip in the thing.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And so on one hand, I was like, wow, I'm impressed because you've got this cool background. But it just looked like somebody doesn't have enough bandwidth, or the Mac Pro needs some more memory or something. And then the other thing that kind of confused me is these are videos asking people to go to jeeptalkshow.com. Well, I'm on jeeptalkshow.com. And so this is where I was going to say, put these on YouTube and definitely promote your YouTube channel. But like you had a list of 5 things. I forget what Tammy's topic was. 5 something.
5 things you need in your Jeep for
you need
winter,
and
stuff.
I can't find what the 5 things are. There's
you gotta
no
listen to the show.
Not everybody listens. And this is where this is an opinion. And everybody does show notes differently, but how do I know if I want to listen? I mean, you got to give me something. And especially for me, if it's a list, and again, this is just my opinion, I want the list. Because if I like it, I'm like, that was really cool. But now I listened and I was on the treadmill and I'm like, what was those again? I don't have to go back and listen again. I want to go back to the website and go, it was blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And then when he was talking about shock absorbers, he listed like 7 of them. And I was like, oh, what was that again? So it's on one hand, you're giving great information, but as a reference source, I was like, And then you have all these links down here at the bottom. And I have like this Amazon-ref- I have no idea what that is. Now that might be the portable starter that you're talking about.
I believe it is.
Yeah. But I would put titles above these to say, because you did, mentioned in this episode, but I was like, yeah, but I don't know what the 4YTTAHWBYZ. Yeah. I would put some sort of either make that make the text portable starter and then use that as the link. I'm assuming that's your affiliate link. And speaking of that, you do say go to jeeptalkshow.com/Amazon. Be very careful with that. I'm pretty sure that's against their terms of service.
Oh, interesting. Did not know.
Because I know you can't go amazon.jeeptalkshow.com because people were doing that. And then what would happen is when somebody went to amazon.com, it would catch their history where they went to amazon.jeeptalkshow.com and Amazon was like, oh, no, sorry. And so I've listened to, for lack of a better phrase, some of the big names that promote Amazon, and they all say the same thing. Go to my website and click on the Amazon banner. So
I appreciate that. I had no idea.
Because I know I have a friend of mine, Jim Cullison, that does the averageguy.tv, and he for years did the averageguy.tv/Amazon, and he got spanked for something. And I wish their terms of service were super duper clear. They're not. And so,
well, there's lawyers involved, so they get paid by the word.
Exactly. So, but that was the only thing I thought to me, because really what we're missing here is content. There's no actual content. And in terms of somebody typing into Google to find your stuff, there's almost nothing here in the episode for Google to find, so that when they type in, best shock absorbers for a Jeep, it's not going to pull up your site because Google doesn't index audio. So
Tony, I can appreciate that you want people to listen to the show for the content. So you don't want to give the punchline away there in your show notes. But as a podcast listener, I listen to all my podcasts on my phone, especially when I'm driving. And the only time I ever go to show notes is to get something that they talked about that I didn't have time to write down. Like I listen to Pat Flynn quite a bit. And the only time I ever go to Pat's show notes is to get the list of whatever he talked about. If I love the episode, then I go to the show notes to get to follow up or to get the top 10. I listen to Daniel J. Lewis, and he gives a list quite often. And the only time I ever go to his show notes is if I need the list, because I didn't have time to write down all 10 while I'm driving. So don't worry about giving away the farm in the show notes and not getting the podcast listen, because most people are coming to the show notes after they've already listened to the episode to get the link that you've given them.
I'm waiting for Daniel's episode, 17 reasons why you should do lists for your podcast. I think that would be great.
Yes.
Like the ultimate
People
meta.
really love lists. They really
Yeah.
do.
They do.
I'll mention this. I'll give Daniel a plug. I actually contacted Daniel about where I could get. Basically, would he review our podcast? Because I wanted somebody to review our podcast, and one of his minions. It wasn't him. I'd love to have a staff. That would be great. Directed me to you guys. So that's how we got connected up.
Nice.
We love Daniel.
Yeah, and so it's just one of those things. Now the good news is, I mean, that sounds great. More show notes means more work. That's the bad news. So that's where like, okay, Dave, are you going to come over and type my show notes?
Especially for a 90-minute show.
Yeah,
exactly. Have fun with that.
And so that's one of those things that's easier said than done. And there is no, as always, there are no rules in podcasting. I know Jay Moore, I think, is the worst guy I know. He will literally type 2 sentences. Today we talked to so-and-so. It was a fun conversation. Put your name on it. Like, not even like who this person is. But when you're Jay Moore and you're an actor and a sports talk guy and whatever, you know, Mr.
But we're not bitter.
Yeah. Yeah. Mr. What is this? What's that one? Jerry Maguire. Yeah. So I just, every time I see that, I'm like, cause it's the same thing. I'll listen to the episode and I'll be like, he talked about, you know, today we're talking with, Schmedley Do Right and blah blah blah, and he's in this movie. It's awesome. Wait till you see this movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I'll go to the show notes. I'm like, what's the name of that movie again? Nothing. That drives me nuts. So
yeah, the show notes are my domain, and I slack there. And I know it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but I've looked at the stats, and there's not for me to go into the show notes. But as you point out, if there's no reason to, why would they?
Yeah. And
what you might do, Tony, is just take the outline of the show and flesh it out a little bit. Maybe write a sentence for each of the slugs on the outline and make that so. Or take notes on the outline as you do the episode. And when you mention a website or something, jot a little note on the show notes for that on the outline, and then turn your outline into show notes.
All right. Sounds good.
Rather than doing the work twice, use what you already done.
Yeah. I've tried to do a lot of optimizations.
Yeah, definitely.
But all in all, you know, I've seen worse websites. It's, you know, I like the fact you have your pictures there, the contact information I didn't have to hunt for. You'd be surprised how many people like, I'm not getting any interaction from my audience. And you go there and like, there's no contact page. You know, I get now why there's different forums. That was a head scratcher for me, not being in your community there. I was kind of, why are there so many things? Has your audience ever asked you about turning those into Facebook groups?
No.
Okay, good. So that answers that question. Because I know for some people that's like the best thing ever.
One thing Facebook doesn't do, and that they don't allow you to search. And of course, forums you can search. So often people go to Jeep sites because something's broken. The check engine light is on, or the wheels are shimmying.
Oh yeah,
death wobble, and they go to look to see how to fix those things.
But like I say, I was how are you making your mobile site? Is that some sort of special plugin or something? Or
I just look for a what do you call it? Is it a CSS? It's been a while since I put it in there. It's just an add-on for WordPress that takes the typical site that you've created, you know, for the people with big screens. And the only thing I have to do special for that is I have to make sure that I stick in a feature image on my web page so that there's an actual, you know, little square box that you can look at with the episode number.
Got it. But all in all, as we start to wrap this up, you know, I like I said, I like the energy of the show. I like the way it started out. You guys, obviously, that's the other thing. There was no winging it in the show. You know what I mean? It's obviously you guys prepare and you know what you're going to talk about when you're starting the show. Your audio quality was great. I never had to grab the volume knob or anything of that nature. Eric, what were your kind of final thoughts?
I liked it. I'm not a Jeep person at all. Don't know anything about Jeeps, and I found the show quite compelling. I felt like the momentum kept it moving forward for me. There weren't any lulls where I started looking at my watch, wondering how long this thing was going to last. I love the way you guys reveal things about yourself at the end in that fireside chat. Would have liked to have heard more of that at the beginning. Use more of each other's names a little bit to help the newbies kind of become part of the club a little quicker. to assimilate them and define some of the lingo every now and then to help newbies as well. But overall, I thought it was great. Refine that call to action at the end to just get people to subscribe and come back next week.
So if I'm hearing it correctly, the 13 things we go through at the end, make that smaller.
Yes. What I would do is kind of sprinkle those in throughout the show. If you have a call to action, like if you have a survey, when you do those transition things, mention the survey or something like that. And then at the end, just get people to subscribe to the show.
Yeah. So we actually had some people complaining about those things in the show, and I actually moved them all to the end. So that's my fault. And when one person complains about something, it doesn't mean they're all complaining, but I do try to listen to the feedback of the listener.
Well, I can understand that if you stop the show, if you're doing an interview with the guy from the tire company and you stop and you go, oh, hey, by the way, use our affiliate links, go to Amazon.com and give us money. Then people are going to go, I thought we were just interviewing somebody. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
But if you're talking about shocks and you say, hey, if you need new shocks for your Jeep, don't forget, we have an Amazon link for all of your shopping needs. If you're going to shop on Amazon, help us by shopping on Amazon through us and get it at the website. So it's a natural tie-in. Give us interview guest suggestions would have been perfect when you wrapped up your interview with your guest.
Yeah.
Right.
When you wrap up with him, next week on the show, we're going to talk to XYZ. And if you ever have an interview guest suggestion for us, you can always email it to us anytime. And put those in where they normally work, where they normally fit.
Right.
I have an old jingle here that I used to play where it's like, hey, if you have a question, call it in. It's 807. I forget my phone number. 807-5236.
This doesn't sound cheesy at all.
No, not at all. But but I used to.
Tony wants to use that for his show.
Yeah, I used to use that as a jingle. Like I used that as a transition. It was like all of a sudden the music would come in. What did you think of that interview? I'd love to hear about it. 866-807. I don't know my phone number anymore because I don't give it out.
Make it up. We won't know.
875-968.
867-5309.
Yeah, exactly.
You're reading this, aren't you?
Well, that was my question. I thought it sounded like at times you were reading it. Are you saying that you guys aren't?
Josh definitely is.
Okay, just making sure. Because otherwise I owe you an apology. I was like, I'm sorry.
No, I just saw an opportunity to get a jab in, and I went for it.
All right, good. I will take the jab. I appreciate that.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Also, too, I don't know if listening to the crying thing, because I know that you guys were talking about you've never made a guest cry.
Yeah.
Somebody has already had to make the reference. There's no crying in podcasting.
I think you're the first.
Nobody? Oh, good. I like that.
There's no crying.
There's no crying in podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. But well, you can find Tony. Obviously, we've been talking about it all episode over at jeeptalkshow.com. Thanks for coming on the show. And Erik, where can people find you?
Oh, find me over at podcasttalentcoach.com. All my podcast information and helpful worksheets, coaching information, all right there for you. And Dave, how about one of your many websites?
Yeah, you can find me at schoolofpodcasting.com. And now that Tony's got it warmed up, if you would like to have your show reviewed, simply go over to podcastreviewshow.com/review me, and you'll be right in his chair. He's got it all warmed up for you. Thanks for watching the Podcast Review Show, or listening for most of you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again real soon with another episode.